let's talk about some of the issues that are in our home that people may not be aware of. So what's the number one brain aging hazard that's in our home, and how do we defend ourselves against that? And Louise, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Nice to be here, Wendy. How are you in beautiful Mexico?
Oh, I am loving it. I'm loving life here. I love the weather and this beautiful jungle behind me. I saw a baby owl yesterday and feeding my peacock. I'm just very happy here.
Oh, I'm so glad. Well, I'm in wintry Idaho right now, so I envy you tremendously.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful there too. It's gorgeous.
Different kind of beauty.
Yeah, a different kind. White snow beauty. Yeah, and so I love having you come on the show because you're such a wealth of information and such an inspiration to so many people. So many health professionals and medical doctors follow you, and you have written 35 books. I mean, you're just a wealth of information. So I want to talk about your new book, Radical Longevity. And so tell us a little bit about how we can live longer.
Well, you've got to really embrace aging. I'm now 70, going on 72. I have to stop and smell the roses and remember my age. I'm 72. So when you approach your 70s, Wendy, the whole aspect of life and what lies beyond becomes very different than when you're approaching 50 or 40. So I needed to write the book, number one, to tell people that there's a new view of aging, that we don't have to age and become decrepit or disabled. As we get older, we can get better. And I really believe we have the technology, we've got the energy medicine, we have the devices to live till 120. But live till 120 with vitality, with passion, with purpose, and with grace. I think it's really a blessing that many of us are living as long as we are. We shouldn't take that for granted because so many people just don't have the privilege of living longer these days. So for those of us that are living on planet Earth, God bless us. Let us continue to thrive till 120. And I wrote this book for you, for me, for everybody that wants to embrace the new view of aging.
Yes, I want to live a long, healthy, medication-free, disease-free life. And I work very hard at that. And I'm always looking for new information and tips and things that I can use to meet that goal. And so what is this paradigm shift in which your biology is not your biography that you talk about in your new book?
Well, many of us were not blessed with longevity genes. And so I really want people, I don't even suggest that people go get their genealogy done, that they decode their genes, because I think it puts them in a real fear mode, which I think is very antithetical to really embracing aging with passion, with excitement, and with grace. So I think it's important to just embrace the concept of Mother Nature being your guide, to live properly, to live simply, to eat wholesome foods, to give blood once a year. The most important thing you can do to live till a ripe old age and die young is to give blood once a year or even 2 or 3 times a year, because iron is a real antagonist to the aging process. I find that there are 2 minerals that can misbehave. One of them is iron, the other is copper. And if they're not in the proper balance or the proper form, they can really be aging triggers. So giving blood is exceedingly important. Eating less meat or eating iron blockers as we're eating more meat is also important. That's where the wine comes into play. That's where a little dairy comes into play, because they're iron blockers. And also making sure once you're past the age of 40 and 45, that unless you have a significant iron deficiency, you check your multivitamin and make sure there's no added iron in that daily multiple.
Yeah, I know it's such a misnomer, because in the 80s, there was so much, marketing of Geritol and, if you're fatigued, take more iron, and people were just loading up on iron every single day. And I'm really concerned about that population.
Well, that's one of the major paradigm shifts, but that's not meant to say that you shouldn't be taking extra B12. We find that B12 is very helpful for the aging process, particularly if it's methylated B12. So methylated B12 can actually substitute for iron when people are feeling deficient, when they're feeling tired, but it's more or less a symptomology of feeling that your adrenals are burning out, that your thyroid isn't being supported, your parathyroid is losing its function, and that your mitochondria are losing its energy. So iron, getting away with the high iron is very important. Wendy, in the book, I tell people to get a yearly ferritin test. Most doctors don't prescribe it, but you want to get a ferritin test at least starting at the age, I'm going to say, of about 40, because that's when men start evidencing heart attacks. and making sure that that ferritin level is between 50 and 70. Some of the levels that you'll see in the normal labs that go up to 300, that's much too high. You want 50 to 70, that's Ng/DL. And then you give blood until you get to that level. That's what the key is.
Fantastic. Yeah. It's so easy to do. Such a simple solution. No detox involved. Just give blood.
It is, because if you want to save your brain from iron overload, because it's one of the triggers of Alzheimer's, you got to lessen your iron load. People that live the longest, the blue zones, have very low iron. And that's why we're always being told to eat less meat, because meat is a high source of heme iron. But if you eat an iron blocker with the meat, you can get away with higher protein. That's where a little good wine comes into play, maybe some black tea and a little bit of coffee. So block the iron at any cost, take a blood test, see where your base levels are, and every year get a ferritin test. That's the most important thing you can do. If there's nothing else that you learned from Radical Longevity, get radical about your ferritin.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why I'm going to live a really, really long time, because I love cheese. So you mentioned that dairy blocks iron.
Yes, it does. As long as now here's the kicker with cheese. There's always a little, shall I say, a thorn in the road.
It's always a caveat.
This is a little caveat. I also wrote about the problem of advanced glycation end products, which is one of the chapters in Radical Longevity. Cheese is a very high source of advanced glycation end products, so be very judicious with your cheese. The cheese that has the lowest advanced glycation end products, which is a sign of aging, happens to be low-fat cheddar. So I'm hopeful that you enjoy low-fat cheddar. To good health till 120, Miss Amy Myers.
Yes, well, I tend to do the Parmesan and Goudas, like more hard cheeses. No, I just crave it, probably for the vitamin K. I don't do too much, so it's not too bad.
A little bit goes a long way. I think that's what the key is there.
Yeah,
you're right about the vitamin K, which is so important for really triggering adult stem cells. So I salute you on that regard.
Yes, yeah, and so let's talk about toxins. So obviously toxins are a huge source of oxidative stress and aging. So what can we do about that to promote anti-aging?
So let's talk about what you're cooking in. So that kind of goes back to the iron. Years ago, we were telling people to use cast iron to cook in because you actually absorbed a little iron into your food. We want to get rid of any kind of cooking utensil that can leach metals into your food. And people pay a lot of attention to what they're eating, but not what they're cooking in. So I think it's important that we get a non-leaching metal. I like the Extrema line of products that are out there these days. It's kind of a ceramic type of cooking utensil. Are you familiar with Extrema?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Like Extrema. And I also it's a company that used to be out very prevalently called Royal Prestige, which is a waterless cooking company where you can cook in a kind of vacuum under 180 degrees, which preserves the life force of foods, because over 180 degrees you lose enzymes. So I like waterless cooking. I like the Extrema. I also like clay, but I like the clay of the Ramertoff, where it's actually lined with a glaze that's made out of glass, because otherwise the clay can leach into the food, and we're finding when we test the food, it's high in lead. So you've got to really get aluminum out of the kitchen, get copper out of the kitchen, anything that can leach into your foods, and the high gauge stainless steel. That's where the waterless cooking. And the other brand that I like happens to be Salad Master, which is a waterless cooking system. It's high gauge stainless.
Okay, great. So let's talk about, stem cells. So how do you make your body produce, far more stem cells than you're producing right now?
By eating a lot of vitamin K products, vitamin K rich products. So that's where your little bits of cheese come in.
That's why my little mouse, I'm a little rat, always craving cheese.
Well, I love cheese. If it only loved me back. But I'm telling you something, I love cheese. There's nothing like a little Caesar salad in the middle of summer, the middle of winter, for fall and spring as well. And the highest source of vitamin K is really in goose liver. So getting back to organ meats, maybe you can take a supplement that's an organ supplement, or you can get some goose liver, very, very high in vitamin K. Also getting more vitamin C, vitamin D, and the other element that I like, and I talk about in Radical Longevity, is resveratrol. All of those tend to tamp up the production of your body's adult stem cells. There are also other ways that you can take stem cells into your body with kind of mitochondrial peptides, which I write about as well. There's a line that I discovered called Medics for Life, which will go into the system in a nanotechnology fashion, a kind of energy medicine way, and allow your body's adult stem cells to replenish themselves. So there are lots of little things you can do, but probably the most important, besides vitamin K and these mitochondria-rich peptides, is also to sleep a little more. And that's where I need to thank you so much, Wendy, because you gifted me with a little pendant. It's called the Harmony Pendant.
Yes.
And you sent that to me on the publication and release of Radical Longevity, so I'm so grateful. But it's allowing me to sleep deeper, taking the edge off things, and I think it's getting people back into a parasympathetic mode. So whatever you do, whether it's taking a little more melatonin, getting grounded, or getting a Harmony Pendant, you got to do whatever it takes, because in this day and age, we're under unrelenting stress. So you do what you have to do to get your system in alignment, in balance, so that your parasympathetic can take hold once again.
Yeah, and that's exactly why the Harmony Pendant was invented, to help reduce stress. And we see that with, we've had over 1,000 reviews of people saying they're sleeping better, they feel less stressed, they feel more calm. And I just think it's, like you said, we're under so many different types of stress that this simple tool is just, it's so invaluable to helping people get into a less stressed state.
Well, it's not just that, but I think it protects against EMFs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yeah. We showed in a study that it has about a 48% reduction in the stressful effects of EMF.
I mean, it's amazing. So your whole bioenergy field becomes protected. And I saw the difference within 2 minutes of putting it on. And I'm like a canary. I mean, I write all my books because I'm exceedingly sensitive myself and have 3 detox pathways out of the 4 detox pathways blocked. So if it works for me, it's going to work for everybody out there. I mean, I highly suggest that people look into the Harmony Pendant. Of all the EMF blocking tools that I've tried over the years, and I get things in the mail every month, to be exact. And I've written a book 10 years ago called Zap, so I get even more because of the popularity of EMFs now. I found that this actually works. So I congratulate you in making me so aware of it, and now I wear it 24/7. Can you wear it into the bath and shower?
Yeah, you can. You absolutely can. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
God, I'm getting it wet all the time.
Okay, no, it's fine. It's fine. If something happens to it, we'll send you another one. Yeah, and I'm glad that you've had a positive benefit from it, because that's just
immediately a positive. I'm going to get it for all my staff, because we all need to get de-stressed. I mean, this is going to be constant. I know we're coming out of the pandemic, God willing, but there's constantly more stresses. I mean, 5G is going to be rolled out nationwide, and who knows what the next assault will be around the corner. So whether it's virus, bacteria, parasites, or EMFs, we got protection.
Yeah. And stress is one of the number one agers out there. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much stress they're under, because they've just kind of like habituated to the EMF or whatever, emotional trauma, or other different types of stressors, financial, emotional, etc.
So true. And that's why in the book, I talk about a lot of these energy medicine devices. If I'd known about the Harmony Pendant, I would have written about it, by the way, when the book went to press. So just so you know, maybe we can add it to another printing. But having said that, I'm a big believer in the flower remedies. Are you familiar with the botched flower remedies?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I live on the stress remedy, the rescue remedy. And I also live on Star of Bethlehem for any kind of trauma. Because writing a book, as I think you know, and I've written 35, now I think this is 37, actually it is 37, is very, very stressful. It's not the writing of the book that's stressful, but in and of itself it is. It's the promotion, it's the marketing, making sure things get out there on time, and making people aware of your book when there's so much competition out there, making it stand out from all the noise.
Yeah, absolutely. Your books have such a wealth of information in them, and I so highly recommend. And this is like the culmination of all, you've written so many books. This is the culmination, like all this choice information that all this research that you've been doing for so long.
Well, it works. And don't forget, I really studied with a master. She was the grand dame of alternative medicine, Dr. Hazel Parcells. She started teaching me, Wendy, when she was 84. I was, I think, about 25. She died at the age of 106 with all of her her mind, her intellect, her spirit was totally intact. So a lot of the principles of what I learned from her so many years ago are intertwined in this book. And, you learn from a master. There are a lot of people that are writing books these days that look at the research, but I studied at the feet of the master. So whatever she taught me is now hidden in this book. It's kind of the buried lesson from Dr. Parcells that nobody has been able to put into a book until now. So Radical Longevity is really a testimony to her.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And so let's talk about some of the issues that are in our home that people may not be aware of. So what's the number one brain aging hazard that's in our home, and how do we defend ourselves against that?
So it really is the copper pipes. And this is an issue that you and I know have spoken about for a while now. It's the copper pipes. I didn't know that there were actually two types of copper. There's the organic copper that we want and that we need because it's so important for the myelin sheath. It's so important for the keratin, the elastin of your skin. But the synthetic copper goes right to the brain. Your body has not had the ability to habituate itself to it. And that's coming from the copper pipes that are in almost everybody's home these days. I think it's 2/3 of the American public have copper water pipes. So you've got to get a water filter to protect against that. That's number one. Number two, you've got to look at your vitamins and minerals and just the way you're going to eliminate iron because of the high ferritin that most of us are walking around with but don't know it. You've got to get a copper-free multiple. And if you're going to have copper in the diet, then use it in food form. That's where the chocolate comes into play. That's where your tea comes into play. That's where your avocados, your nuts and seeds. There are plenty of foods out there that are rich in copper. Or get some liver, get some organic defatted liver, and take that as a supplement. But you do not want synthetic copper. When I was writing this book, I got involved with a gentleman who is a university professor, I think emeritus, in University of Michigan. His name is Dr. George Brewer, who says that the biggest connection between the environment and Alzheimer's has to do with copper, and it's the synthetic, inorganic, divalent copper. So a lot of what he said is in this book. You'll see the levels that you need to check for in your water. But just knowing that you can get a reverse osmosis system to block copper is the most important thing you can do. That would be number one. Look at your vitamins and minerals. Get rid of anything that has a copper content. It's usually 2 mcgs of copper. You want a copper-free multiple as well as an iron-free multiple. And half the multiples on the market all have copper.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely focus on food-based copper, taking, a desiccated liver and like eating beans and copper-rich foods.
Yes, we're on the same page.
Fantastic. Yeah. And so what common household items might be aging you, say Wi-Fi?
Well, you've got your cell phone, number one. You've got your mobile phone, which actually emits more radiation than your cell phone. You've got the baby monitor out there that many people are using. You've also got smart meters on the house. So you got to be really careful with all of that. And even the Fitbit that people are wearing can affect their body rhythms. So for that, that's where your little pendant comes into play, and maybe some grounding, some earthing at night. And I also have some shungite surrounding my computer.
Yeah, I do too. I love the shungite.
You got to layer all these things. I'm not sure that there's one particular remedy for all the EMS, but it's not going to get better. It'll probably get worse. And as much as you can, I think you've got to unplug the router at night if you can do that, so that you're in a completely Wi-Fi free environment when you're regenerating, rejuvenating during sleep.
You wrote a whole book on EMF. I mean, yours is the first one out there, or one of the very first ones in the health space. You were way ahead of your time on that.
I know it, and I had a target on my back. It wasn't a popular book in those days. Now people are coming around. Yeah, but it's so important. I mean, you can see what's going on with the kids and the screens and the hyperactivity and even the brain tumors and the ear tumors. I had a parotid gland tumor, which made me so very aware. So I do salt and soda baths at night to kind of de-stress, get rid of the static electricity. I ground as much as I can, and I'm wearing my Harmony pendant. There's all kinds of things you can do to get back into a parasympathetic mode. I'm naturally very sympathetic, so I over-respond and overreact. Anything that I can do to relax, as well as many of your viewers, is very important. That's where some of the baths come into play. That's where a little essential oil like lavender, maybe a little ylang-ylang, and yarrow. Yarrow specifically, Wendy, is very protective against EMFs.
Interesting. Yeah, I do an Epsom salt bath almost every night. Definitely been doing those lately. They help me so much. And I do the essential oils in there as well. Just amazing. And let's talk about like bioenergetics. So you mentioned bioenergetics when we were talking earlier before the show. What type of bioenergetic modalities do you like? How do they help with anti-aging?
I like anything where people can learn to de-stress. I love certain types of music, which I feel is very bioenergetic. I think all the classics are very healthy for people to listen to on a daily basis. I think it's important to understand that the rhythm of the music is very uplifting or very degenerating. And listening to what is currently popular now, it may not be uplifting to your soul or to your chakras. I'm also really liking some of those bioenergetic remedies that I talk about in the book. That's where the MedX for Life comes into play. And I'm also very fond of a redox signaling remedy called a SIA that's also out on the market. It's very helpful for cell communication. So whatever you can do on a cellular level, and the key is to get to the cells, get to the mitochondria, the little plant powerhouses in the cell, is where the key is. And you've got to do these things on a daily basis. Detoxification is not a seasonal event anymore. It's a daily basis. And that's where taking a little dandelion root tea, and then I have a special drink in store for my new readers and fans, which is in Radical Longevity, which is a cranberry elixir that is very important because it opens up the detox pathways. So whatever you can do on a daily basis, including some of the Bach flower remedies, I think is very helpful. And, the other thing that I think is good bioenergetically is just the simple fact of being in Mexico and going out into the ocean and grounding yourself on the ocean floor if you can, and walking on the sand. I mean, there's nothing like sunshine, sand, barefoot when you can, to really ground yourself and tamp down all the oxidative stress and get all the healing electrons. We're just missing that aspect. I call it vitamin D, vitamin grounding.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say is when I came from the United States to Mexico and I started, swimming in the ocean, and walking, getting sun every day, it just I feel like a completely different person. I mean, it just has helped de-stress me so much, so invaluable.
I am so looking forward to the summer because it's been a very stressful year for all of us. I mean, whether we're in total lockdown or partial lockdown, we have loved ones that we haven't been able to see. So there's a lot of natural energy that you get from just being in the sun or showing your face to the sun, getting sunlight into your eyes. All those things are kind of natural remedies that we're taking so for granted because we're locked down, we're in our basements, we're in our homes, we're not seeing each other. I mean, the concept of social action, I think, is bioenergetic as well. It's so important that there's social action and activity between human beings. And we're missing that. We're missing really successful touching and hugging. I mean, that is so very bioenergetically nourishing that it's very tragic to see what's going on. So we'll hopefully be coming out of that and moving ahead into a very bioenergetically sound and radical longevity, healthy future.
Yeah, well, I believe we are coming out of it. I feel like the evil is not going to be winning here. We are coming out of it. Light is, the light is winning, and I have 100% expectation that we will be coming out of this the next year or so.
We'll keep affirming that from your lips to yours.
Yeah, it's not as dismal as some influencers make it out to be.
I totally agree. And what's your mind? You've got to have a miracle mindset. We're talking about living older, living better, living with resilience and vigilance and passion. You really have to have a very positive mindset. And the concept of affirmations every day, I think, is incredibly important. I don't have the discipline to sit down and meditate. Oh, that I wish I would. But I'm always affirming that I'm healthy, I am strong, I have a strong immune system, the light is healing, the world, the universe, my space, everybody's space, and that the world is in total harmony and peace. So whatever it is, make your words very positive because we know the power of speaking. I believe you not are what you think, but you are what you speak.
Absolutely. Yeah. The biology of belief is so powerful, and it just that permeates every action and thought and word that now, because I do believe, I know that all of our thoughts and actions and words are so powerful. So let's talk about, why should we change our point of view of aging as a privilege and not something to dread? I know some people dread aging, or they just have a negative viewpoint of it. And I don't at all. It's the more I've aged, I'm going to be 50 next year. The more I've aged, the more I love getting older. And I feel so much better as I get older. And the research shows, Gail Sheehy, she did, the decades of a man's life. And I forget the name of her other book about women's life. And every decade, women get happier and happier and happier. It's not something to dread.
No, it's not something to dread. So I think, first of all, we shouldn't talk about aging. We should talk about saging.
Yes.
As we get older, we accumulate more wisdom. So as we sage, we get older. But I also think it's important to understand that we approach aging. To me, aging is just a massive accumulation of a lifetime of toxicities and deficiencies that we need to deal with at the root cause. So like any kind of disease, you get to the root cause. Is it the EMFs in your environment? Is it the stress? Is it the toxic metals? Is it the mold in your home? Is it the fact that you're using too much iron in your cooking? You just put a magnifying glass on all those different areas, clean them up, and just plant the deficiencies. Eat properly, get back to nature, sleep well, get a harmony pendant to get into the parasympathetic state. And I think that's all it takes. I think it's also important to have positive intersocial interaction, to have meaningful work, to have daily exercise, and also to have restricted time eating. I think the concept of intermittent fasting is one that we should all adopt 2 to 3 times a week. So all those things are really simplistic. They're outlined in Lavender and Radical Longevity. And I think that it's all within our grasp. When I wrote the book, I wrote an acknowledgement to all the people that were my mentors. And I thought to myself, what was it that they missed? And I think what they missed was a lot of the issues that I'm putting in the book, the concept of the iron overload, the wrong types of copper that can really affect your brain chemistry and your neurons. Lack of cognition as you get older. So the things that you really need to do are hiding in plain sight. And I've made the book easy. You can start on very simplistic levels by changing the way that you cook, the way that you eat. No high and dry cooking. Forget about the air fryer. Get a waterless cooking utensil. And I think that there's things that you can do that are even more advanced, and that's where the bioenergetics come into play, whether it's the redox signaling molecules that you take internally or put on your skin or on your hair, on your face and your eyes. But you can do this on any level and start wherever you're comfortable. So I think it's within our grasp, and we need not face aging and fear that you'd be limited by any means or that your independence is going to be challenged. I think we all have the ability, if we have the desire, to really put our desire and our intentions in the right place and grasp hold of whatever is out there and just do it. And the idea is this, I think that if you can just accommodate all these things into a daily routine, I think you're much better off. But getting rid of the stress is number one, and giving blood most definitely is number two.
Fantastic. Yeah. And so I love your work so much. I've followed your work for years. I highly recommend anyone that's interested in health and longevity and detoxification to go follow Louise Gittleman, grab her new book, Radical Longevity. And if you guys want to get some free downloads and some freebies, you can go to radicallongevitybook.com. And when you order Anne's book, Radical Longevity, you get some freebies when you go to that website. So Anne, thank you so much for coming on the show. Any parting words or thoughts that we didn't cover?
No, I think we can all live to 120. So let's do it, my dear.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah. And so everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. Anne, thanks so much for coming on the show. And thank you guys for tuning in every week. I'm so thankful and so blessed that you choose to spend your time with me. And I wake up every morning. I love what I do, and I love trying to help you guys live your best life and step into your life purpose. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you guys very, very soon.
The Myers Detox Podcast is created and hosted by Wendy Myers. This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Wendy Myers and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.